This book is known as the most sinister book on demonology and witchcraft ever written. Here is the book on demonology of King James.
So what you're saying
Before
is...
we end demonology...
Because the King James Bible is from the same time, that demonology belongs in the standard works. Yeah.
That book. That looks scary without reading the pages. Like, looks scary.
Okay. Welcome back to Midnight Strike Through Mormons. Today we're talking demonology. Go.
Well,
what is that? You dropped a book in our laps that literally looked like it came out of the Salem witch trials. And there's ghosts that are going to come out it.
You're not far off, because this book is called Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of the Witches. What? This is the book that brought about the Salem witch trials. Not just that. This was first written in 1486. There, Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of the Witches.
Whoa.
Dude.
This is the witch hunting guide. This book single-handedly caused a witch hunting craze that lasted 2 centuries.
I'm going to go buy it and send it to Greg Locke.
Do you know who Greg Locke is?
You better look in my eyeballs. We ain't afraid of you, you stinking witch.
The pastor.
Oh, he's the pastor. Is like, I know that there's 8 witches in my congregation.
You haven't seen that video?
We break your spells. We break your curse.
Oh, he got super popular.
Yeah, we'll have to show you.
You're
It's hilarious.
educating us in all of this deep, highbrow stuff. We'll get you an education in the lowbrow internet stuff.
We even got an address for one of you.
So anyway, keep going.
So, I mean, this is the book. This book, it's 1,000 pages. 1/3 of it is what is a witch. And they're real. I mean, if they weren't real, then we wouldn't have witchcraft.
So this is like
This is
before first wave feminism. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
This is the Inquisitor's Hand Guide.
Oh, I gotta see this. Can I see it?
Well,
Do you read Latin?
Oh, it's in Latin?
It will not be translated into English until 1928, but I do have an original copy in English too.
What?
I would love to see that one.
Okay, well, let me tell you about it first. First of all, what is a witch? The second part talks about breaking witches' spells, how to deal with it. The third part is the trial, how to proceed with the trial, how to get confessions, and it lists the various methods of torture. And it also says the ends justify the means. You can lie to the person accused of witchcraft. You can absolutely lie to them and if they then confess, then you still put them to death. But this book is known as the most sinister book on demonology and witchcraft ever written.
Because it actually caused actual death of people.
That's an understatement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Minimum 50,000 is 50 to 100,000 put to death because of this book.
Whoa.
Now, who wrote this book?
Oh, you asked me. It's actually a single person.
Okay,
Really? So it's not like a bunch of like people together. Not like a
No. He was
So this is like the Mein Kampf of anti-witch people.
Yeah. I think his name's Kramer. He wrote this book, and then another guy latches his name on it, but it's really just this guy, 1486. And he was an inquisitor, but this was the guide. And his numbers aren't that great by himself. I mean, he tried about 100 witches and had 50 of them burned. But this was the model. And so in Germany especially, I mean, they were just killing witches by the tens of thousands.
Oh my gosh. But how could,
So a guy named Kramer wrote this.
what was their justification of tens of thousands of people? What, not swimming and all that other...
They used the Bible for justification. Where in the Old Testament it says the sorceress should be put to death.
Yeah, suffer not a witch to live, right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I want to know more about the author. So who is Kramer?
Well, hold on.
Well, we've got, look, Exorcismus akea. That must be some kind of water exorcism. So exorcizo te criatura ake, which probably means if you want to exorcise a creature in water in the name of the Patris, so that's going to be of the Holy Father, omnipotent, and in the name of Christ, in who is holy, and his spirit that is virtuous. With water you exorcise effuganandum, and effigy is with fire. That might be a bad but either, wow, they're talking about exorcisms with water and fire. Neither one of those sound good.
Well,
You know?
okay. So the guy who wrote this is Heinrich Kramer. Heinrich Kramer. He's a clergyman. And
For Church of England? For
no, Catholic Church.
Okay.
Catholic Church. Now, 1486, there's no Church of
Oh,
England.
right.
That
Yes,
won't be
yes.
till
Yes.
like 1532. So he's the guy. And then it just, because of the printing press, they make multiple copies. And so it starts going around. Although you could go online right now, you won't find a copy for sale. I mean, it's just, you can imagine every major institution library wants an old copy of this. And is it too much of a flex if I pull out another copy?
Yes.
No, but
Get it,
oh,
get
It's even older than that.
And as you're pulling that out, what did he do? Like, what did he define as a witch?
And what made him so angry at witches? Was he just dumped by a chick who was into crystals, or what?
Well, here's the thing. They felt witches had made a pact with the devil, thus the demonology aspect. They said that it's actually witches who do the bidding of Satan, is what this is saying. That a witch will cause something to go bad in the life of a young maiden, and then she will need to consult the witch to have it resolved. And so that's where you get into the demonology aspect.
And then this is obviously some kind of hide.
That is bound in the skin of a witch.
Oh, jeez.
my
I was like, Reid. That was pretty awesome, dog. That was an 11 out of 10, bro. You got me on that one.
That's called vellum. All early books were bound in vellum. It's just it's like calf skin. It's just very thin. That's the natural color.
So what made this, like, this just a random clergyman, like, what made this dude's book take off as opposed to...
Well, 1486, you're almost at the beginning of the Inquisition. I mean, this is really kicks it off. Okay. And then that goes for a while. But here's the thing. This had been going on, and back in the 1200s, they passed a law that there could be no trial where by experience, which means we're going to test and see if somebody's a witch, like we're going to torture them, or we're going to see if they float, we're going to do whatever. Yeah. That was outlawed, but then they just broke all the rules again and just started going at it. Again, using, I mean, it is a book that has caused untold suffering. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people say, oh, you should burn it or whatever. And it's like, okay, we're a museum here. We're a museum disguised as a bookstore. We tell actual history. Now, here's what a lot of people, and this will shock people more than anything. This is a first edition King James Bible, 1611.
Yeah.
In 1589, 14 years earlier, King James writes a book on demonology.
Whoa. What?
King James wrote a book, and it's called Demonology. Now,
wait, so hold on. So before King James, the archetypal, not prophet king, but academic king, righteous king, okay, that brings us the most quoted Bible, and the Bible that the vast majority of churches still use, and we hear quoted in cinema, in poetry, and everything. Before that, King James, that basically got the King James Bible made the Bible, he did a compendium on demonology.
Yeah. Well, okay. Why would he do that? Let's go back to his personal history. So 1597 is when he does, I may have said in a different day, 1597 is when he does the book, but in 1589, he's going to marry Anne of Denmark. Okay. And so he sends for her, and she's coming, and her ship gets caught in this very unusual storm. It's like the only ship. Everybody else is fine, and it has to harbor, I think, in Oslo, Norway. And he blamed witches for casting a weather spell. Oh. And then he's going to be chivalrous, so he goes to get her. And then on their way back, another unusual freak storm happens on the North Sea. They're going to Scotland. And he goes, it is, now I know 100% it's the witches who are doing this. So when he lands on shore, he releases a ferocious witch hunting vendetta. And he rounds up, in the little town he rounded up, he goes, you guys are basically the closest, so it was you guys. And he rounds up 70 people, has them tortured until they confess that they did it.
King James?
This is King James. But he is King of Scotland at the time.
Whoa.
Or Prince James, King of Scotland. Because right at this time, Queen Elizabeth, daughter of Henry VIII, is the Queen of England.
And ironically, she was good friends with John Dee. He was a counselor to the royal family. You might call him a witch.
Yeah.
A magus.
So
Whoa, okay.
So he then, but he has experience in trauma with death close to him. His mother is executed in front of him.
King James.
King James' mother is executed, and you've heard of her, but you probably haven't put two and two together. His mother was Mary, Queen of Scots.
Oh, okay.
And who had her put to death? Queen Elizabeth. Because she was rivaling Queen Elizabeth for power. And Queen said, yeah, it's not happening. So she had her executed.
Gee.
Queen Elizabeth is the Virgin Queen, has no children.
Yeah.
So it comes back around to James, and he comes into power in 1603. What's the first thing he does? 1604, he passes this new law on witches. Queen Elizabeth was somewhat sympathetic. It's like, okay, you got caught 1 year in prison, then you're out. First offense. King James, doesn't matter what, first offense, death.
Whoa.
First offense, death. And he also allowed that to be if children were accused. So he would have children.
Whoa.
Only the youngest would not be put to death.
Really?
So what is happening in 16?
I hate King James now. It's okay.
What is he doing at the same time? 1604, 1605. Okay, it's time for a new Bible. That's when the King James start. So these are running parallel.
He's running witch hunts as
Witch hunting
So,
he's
as-
getting the Bible written.
Mass murder seems to be a part of his family tradition. Like his mom was into it and he's into it, right?
Well,
Jeez.
not Mary Queen of Scots. I mean, she just wanted to be queen of England.
Didn't she kind of proxy order the death of Lady Jane Grey?
No. That is Mary, daughter of Henry VIII.
Okay.
Different Mary.
Oh,
Different Mary.
Okay.
We're learning a lot today. There's a lot of Marys
Yeah,
and
it's
a lot of the same. Okay.
English history.
Don't date any chicks named Mary.
Well, who's Bloody Mary?
That's daughter of Henry VIII.
Okay, and that's
But
not
that's
Mary
not Mary Queen of Scots.
Okay.
That's a totally different Mary. Okay. Here is the book on demonology of King James.
So King James of the King James Bible.
And
wrote
this came out 14 years before the King James Bible.
Now the one you're holding in your hand is what copy is this?
This is, are you talking what year or what? I mean, this is the second book. He did 3 books, and they're all in here on demonology.
So this book, it's like you're physically holding itself. This is not like a recreation from like 30 years ago. This is
Oh,
like
no. This is over 4 centuries old.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
No, everything is real here.
Now, with this right here, is it another like instruction manual on how to hunt witches, or
This one is like book 2, a description of sorcery and witchcraft. So he's going in, he's laying down the ground rules, but he's doing it because he absolutely believes that it's happening.
Yeah.
And so this is to identify it. And he's going in, I mean, you can see right here, he's naming names and everything. I mean, this book by no means put as many to death, But then they had these Scottish witch trials, and about 2,500 people accused of witchcraft were put to death because of this.
Whoa.
Okay, you're on that.
1597,
Okay, and then the year on this.
1486. So it's a century before. But this got it going. This is a later incarnation of taking.
But these are cousins of each other.
well, they're
and-
both books that are attacking people who are accused of being witches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is also demonology. Isn't that also more than just witches? Isn't it like what other evil spirits are and demons
Well,
are?
it
and-
goes in there, and he proposes that fairies, brownies are just fallen angels, and he's giving his definition of what is going on.
Okay.
So it's similar to angelology, right? You're just defining what different types of demons are.
Were there
with
prescriptions
certain-
of death like this had, or
No, because he wrote this before he becomes king of England. But 4 years later, then he enacts laws that prescribe all the punishment. He's not doing the punishment phase in here. This is just the guide.
So, do you think how much influence did this type of thinking have on the King James version of the Bible?
Well, that I couldn't really answer. But I think it's interesting that it's published just within years of this. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes people do bad things, but they also accomplish something else. But it's
the
just
guy
like,
that invented fertilizer invented mustard gas? Like the population of the world boomed 1 billion people after the invention of nitrous fertilizer, but then the same guy in World War I invents mustard gas, which kills millions of people. So.
well, and then if you bring that even forward, I've recently acquired a collection of artifacts that belong to Oscar and Emily Schindler, as in Schindler's List. Well, here's the thing. He accomplished a great good by saving many Jews. But the only reason he was able to accomplish that is because he was like a really seedy guy, and he knew how to bribe. He knew how to do all this, which if he was a straight arrow, he wouldn't have been able to do.
Yeah.
He was a womanizer. But that's right. People have flaws.
That's more
Hi-
laid
hist-
bare in history.
Yeah, history is very interesting, but this is absolutely the last thing you would expect. A guy associated with the printing of the most printed Bible in the world writes a book on demonology 14 years before.
So, in this book, what is the coolest, like, demonology stuff that he says? Like, what's the most interesting part of it?
This is just an overview of all of the understanding that had happened, that he has pulled together, and he had access to a lot of documents. And he just gives a very compelling overview, and he does it almost like C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters. It's like a conversation. And so he puts himself in here as one of the people. His avatar, King James' avatar, is in here talking.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. And then, so he's it's this conversation where he's laying everything out, almost identical. I wouldn't be surprised if C.S. Lewis was influenced by that approach.
Really?
Really? Wow.
Because Screw Tape Letters is...
So okay, this
Yeah.
is, man, your store is crazy because it's like trying to drink out of a historical fire hose here. So I'm just recapping this. This great dude that we've all kind of historically venerated, and this might be our lazy learning and ignorance here, but we've always kind of just assumed that King James must have been a great guy because he commissioned this great revamping of the Bible that was in not a state of confusion, but needed a new Bible. The world needed a new Bible that was, as they perceived, more accurate. All right, which is a great and good benevolent thing. But before making this big, giant magnum opus of benevolence, he was straight up blaming witches for bad sea voyages of him and his girlfriend, rounding up the locals, torturing them and killing them under
After
the
they confessed.
after they confessed under the auspices of this other book, the book on demonology.
That is correct.
It's like when you find out Thomas Edison was a jerk and he wasn't this great inventor and he stole all of his patents from like Nikola Tesla and all these other people. You're like, dang it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, now are we putting King James in the same memory hole or what?
Well, I think a lot of people who have studied him already knew some of the other things he did. They weren't happy with him, but most people, when I say most people, I'm in front of thousands of people a year, and I kind of have a general understanding of where people's knowledge level is at. And with James, it stops at the Bible. Okay, he's the guy, and they just kind of leave it at that. But he came up and had his experiences and was not unused to death, and he felt he was doing the right thing by ridding England and Scotland of witches.
The original woke scold.
So he just thought it was infested with witches.
Oh yeah.
If he kills 70 right off the boat because it's the nearest town,
Well, okay. He didn't kill all 70, but he tortured them to where some of them or most of them wish they were dead. I mean,
And so then they confessed and they killed them.
Yeah.
And it's like
Many
a
of them
tortured
died because
confession.
of the
Yeah.
torture.
Jeez Louise.
That's crazy.
So it's funny because if this was happening today, we would say how terrible they don't have any freedom. But if King James had some oil, we'd go give him some freedom. You know what I'm saying? We would go figure it out. But this is dictatorship and terrorism. We would classify it today.
Mm-hmm.
How interesting! Like if you put yourself, if you were to get into a time machine with the thoughts you have now and witness this, you would equate this man to like Osama bin Laden. Like understand. And this is the gentleman that commissioned the Bible.
Well, okay, here's something else. What was a witch? Let's just say a young woman had a gift of combining a few herbs and healing somebody. She was a witch.
Gee.
And so, I mean...
So he would not be a fan of like the doTERRA MLS.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And Young Living.
Don't come to Utah County. They've got pre-workout that they'll sell you. And then oh my God.
Okay, so here's one more book that none of you have seen.
There's more?
One more book.
What? Jeez. Okay.
This book is called Natural Magic. It's really the oldest book in English on magic.
I know this.
Whoa. What is it?
Well, but now natural magic, this is turning rocks into gold. This is alchemy
Yeah.
Whoa.
and everything.
Okay.
But
This is a lot of people think the author of this is the Count of Saint Germain.
Oh.
Okay.
Really?
okay,
If you're into that stuff, yeah.
but this book has a cool story.
Okay, hit it.
Because the owner of this felt it was his responsibility as he traveled the world to track down the oldest and best books on magic, alchemy, and others. And he walks into a bookshop in Birmingham, England in 1905, and he buys this book. In fact, it's written in the front. Bought this book in 1905. And in this person's own autobiography, he tells the story about this book. Who was that? Harry Houdini. This is
What?
Houdini's personal copy of Natural Magic.
Oh,
Whoa. Oh, I should have recognized that.
Well,
He covered it with his hand.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Whoa.
dude.
So in 1905, he buys.
this book, which was printed in 1658 on Natural Magic. It's the first edition of that.
Oh my gosh. So, okay, so I got to know. In your reading of this, how much of it do you just think, oh, this is garbage? My heart breaks because they're sentencing to death chicks that have figured out.
Natural Magic wasn't really going that.
No, but I'm saying of all of these.
Oh, yeah, well, that's number one, Malleus Maleficarum. That 2 centuries. I mean, that one, until things be almost 3 centuries, because it wasn't until about 1750 till things died down.
Gee.
Salem witch trials are 1692.
So
the Salem witch trials those weren't the worst of the European witch trials were far
Okay,
worse.
but
Right?
that's with hundreds of millions of people. But the fact that there's only 500,000 people in the Americas in 1692, and like several hundred were accused of witchcraft, the odds of being accused of witch were higher in Salem or the Americas than it ever was in Europe.
Oh.
Right.
So it's like
Okay.
a per capita thing.
Per capita.
Hey, quality of quantity over our tyranny. You know what I'm saying? So,
Okay.
jeez, that is. So, have you ever had any like dark experiences with any of these books? Like, have you ever thought like, okay, the physical relic is imbued with something evil, or has it kind of always just been like, eh?
No, I understand what the books are, but I will tell you, I do a lot of lectures for schools and other things, and people have a visible reaction to many books because of their history.
Really?
And
My wife's ancestors, she has a couple that were killed at the Salem witch trials. You know, we've done our genealogy, and yeah, my wife's direct descendant of some people that were killed there. So now she just thinks it's cool and explains why she likes crystals so much and doesn't really go much deeper than that. You know what I'm saying? But you
Yeah.
do kind of think like, holy crap, I'm holding a book that convicted ancestors to death. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That's pretty heavy.
yeah, well, and it's one reason. My goal in the whole thing is education. To really, because huge parts of history have just been left out or just skimmed over. But I think the more pieces you put together, it just gives a clear overall view of why we are where we are today, because these things have happened. So, and history tends to repeat itself, and you can see these parallels in what has happened over the centuries.
Wow. Okay. So,
So
any
what
other
you're s-
questions
So what you're saying
before we
is,
end demonology?
because the King James Bible is from the same time, that demonology belongs in the standard works.
Well,
They took out the Book of Maccabees in the first King James version. We should have thrown in the Book of
King
Demonology.
James actually had all of the Apocrypha, the 14
So
books.
my question
sweet.
is, do either of the books get into the specific demons that are
Like the
yeah,
This one does.
like Solomon's book.
yes,
This
yes,
one
so
does. This one
it does. Okay.
This
So
one
it
knows.
names them and
It
like,
names them.
Oh,
It goes through and
interesting.
names them.
Like, does it say, like, oh, Beelzebub's this bad guy that did this?
It goes in. It goes
Yeah.
into.
Because I think that's what's really interesting. When you start getting into angelology, you start seeing, okay, you can see here's what Gabriel's role and Michael and Raphael and these other angels, but there are legions in hell, and they have a structure in the same way heaven does,
Yeah.
and you start figuring out that certain demons, like their role is to cause people to commit adultery. Their role is to cause people to steal. And when you start thinking, like, wait, these guys are organized by roles.
Who's
of,
the
like,
demon that makes you overeat? No.
there is one.
There is one for gluttony.
Yeah, he's a parasite.
Ah, dang it.
So it's like, well, that makes you think when you're tempted to do that, is there someone in the room with you? You know, like things like that. It makes you start going like, ugh, this is like a real thing.
And Reid, were these books, were they based in, because like Malleus Maleficarum, is that based off of stuff like within the Bible or the Apocrypha or both? Or
Oh, well, it quotes both.
Okay.
I mean,
And kind of uses those to justify the thing that it's trying to tell you to do.
Mhm.
So it's more than taking the Bible and
saying, here's what the Bible is saying to do. It's saying, here's what I'm going to do. Here's the Bible justifying it.
Was it
right?
Do you think one of the reasons why King James just had such a hatred for witches was because his mother was executed by a witch
not so much
sympathizer,
because of his
or-
mother, because he felt witches went after his wife, or
Mm.
his proposed wife, Anne of Denmark, and then himself. And it's just like, wait, I'm the
But
king.
was there a predecessor to that? Like,
Uh,
as opposed to blaming the natural weather, like, you know, he seemed to have a prejudice already set. Like, what made him just go, it has to be the witches doing it, and not just...
Well, he had a lot of trauma early in life. I mean, because his mother moved around and there were wars going on. And so he saw a lot. I mean, he saw a lot of things
Yeah,
that you could just imagine, Braveheart type stuff.
Okay, so I have one last question before we finish here. okay, so a lot of people are always trying to dunk on Christianity and on belief and in the Bible, saying all of these horrible things, whether it's the Crusades or the witch trials, were always done in the name of God and the Bible. Bible's bad because all these bad things are done in the name of the Bible, right? Well, if all of these witch trials were happening in like 1692 in the 15th century in Europe, 17th century in America, so on and so forth, the Bible had already been around as the Old Testament for 2 millennia and as the New Testament for literally 1500 years prior. What was it about the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries that made it so that all of a sudden there was this hyper justification of killing witches? What was the trigger for that?
The printing press.
Really?
Oh wow.
You talked about the previous 1500 years, the scriptures were only handwritten. So your common person had no access to scriptures. Printing press comes along, more access, but it's still in Latin. But that's also when they start printing this guide. And it's no different. These big events, printing press, massive, internet, massive. Satan always finds a way to take something good and take it to the dark side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because as we're talking about this, it keeps on bringing to mind, this feels like the doctrines of men mingled with scripture, right? They're like, hey, we have this thing that we want to accomplish. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to twist these scriptures to get it to go,
Or
right?
when we die, we're gonna get to heaven. We're gonna find out King James is right about everything. He's like, no, there really just were a lot. Like, you'd be surprised.
King James and Greg
It's
Locke.
like,
right?
I literally,
Pastor
was
Greg
like,
Locke.
wow, like we got rid of all of them. Trust me, it would have been horrible without me.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez. Well, I think it's interesting because you find the way people talk about Joseph Smith. Sometimes our friends of other denominations they say he's a witch because he had a seer stone and he had a Urim and Thummim and there was a Jupiter talisman and things like that. And they say, oh, well, it was really evil and bad that he had those things. But without knowing anything about those things he was using and how he was using them, they just have this assumption it's bad. Because, you hate to say it, but King James won. So his attitude is one that was passed down. His attitude is one that has kept going. And now, anything that's slightly different, people say, oh, that's witchcraft, that's evil, that's bad. When that's not the case. Crystals aren't evil. It's true. If you have a plant and you put a certain crystal in it, it will make the petals bloom more. Is that evil, or is that just a natural part of how our earth works?
So are you saying that we get back at King James 500 years later by signing up for a multi-level marketing scheme? No, I'm just kidding.
All I'm saying is, when the apostles saw a man walk on water, they said, Lord, Lord. If King James saw it, he would say, witch, witch.
Okay, that's true. Wow.
Interesting.
All right.
Right. So.
This was Midnight Mormons. See you guys in the next program.